are live. It is the Sports Affiliation War Room, episode 3. I am SoCal Ball Nerd. I've got Sports Debate with Charles, my man Charles, and at Cubby Strickland, Cubby himself. We are the Sports Affiliation. Again, episode 3. We are going to go over rookie landing spots. The last 2 weeks, we talked about QBs, tight ends, rookies, wide receivers. We did not get into IDP. We may have some defensive players that we bring up today, though, as we are now seeing where these rookies have fallen. We have seen the last couple days undrafted free agents as well, some names that have risen from there. As we know, a lot of the NFL makeup is undrafted players. Almost 50% of the league is undrafted players, people. So names to watch out for there. We will get into those in the coming weeks. A lot of this will be maybe the names you know, maybe a few that you don't. But now we know where they're at. So now we can take that. It all depends on where they land, and we got something to work with. So Fantasy Football 2023 has started. The Sports Affiliation is your place for all of it, and I've got two of the best here to give us some great fantasy draft takeaways. Charles, how are you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing great. It's good to be here as always. Let's hit it.
Cubby, happy to have you, brother. Say hello to the people.
What's up, everybody? Glad to be here. Let's get it going.
So what do you guys think of the draft as a whole without getting too much into it?
Some weird picks, especially in the first round. We were just talking about it a little bit. Some crazy trades. Things never go quite the way we, think they will. But I think this one was a little extra weird. What do you guys think?
100%, dude. It was wild. The first round, I don't think was pretty much outside of a few couple picks. Nobody expected what we got in the first round or even the rest of the draft. It just threw the whole thing off after the first round. So it was wild, but it was entertaining. It was good.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to go with that is, we know the number one guy for the longest time was Bijan Robinson, right? He's got that Bijan mustard. He's hot. He's saucy. He can do it all. But running backs in the NFL have taken a decline. We mentioned Deontay Foreman, right? Great year, signs for $3 million for a year. I mean, it's obvious that running backs are very disposable in this league. But when guys come about, how high are they valued? And that was the thing here for me was everybody knew Bijan was great, but the consensus around running back position was we're not going high anymore on that. Well, Bijan went 8th to the Falcons. So we've got a running back. We may not see the first pick ever again, but we still had a stud running back go in the top 10. And he went to a team that most of us, I think, although the name came up because of it being an option, none of us really thought the Falcons would be the place to go because of Tyler Algier and what he did. We know the Falcons are a run-first team. We know they have a running back in place. So taking a talented player who's the best at their position, I'll never argue with that. But as Atlanta and where you are, is that the right pick? And then where are you guys' thoughts on that? But also, what does it do fantasy-wise for Bijan? What does it do fantasy-wise for Algier? And just kind of where are you guys on that? And I'll go to Cubby first, and then we'll go to Charles.
Well, yeah, I really think that they could have addressed other needs with that pick. I heard rumblings that they were going to take him leading up to the draft. I didn't want to believe it. I hated it right up until they did it, and I've been warming up to it ever since. I do think it's a good spot for Bijan. I was, pretty bent out of shape for Algier, but this is what you see typically when teams don't invest high draft capital in players. They just don't look at them the same way that they do the premium selections, even when they succeed. So, they did what they did. They moved on from him. I mean, they didn't move on from him, but they did add to the position quite a bit. It might not be completely over for Tyler because they did give double-digit carries to 2 backs in the same game last year, a whole bunch, like at least 8 times. But the problem is they have 4 backs on the roster now that they like to give the ball to. There's Bijan and Tyler, Caleb Huntley, Cordarrelle Patterson. Last year they really touted, they really rotated all of those guys, except for Bijan. If that's the case, that might not be good for Bijan either. but it's definitely not good for Algier. Consistent volume just cannot be expected now. He's one of the best handcuffs in the league, but outside of injury, you're probably not going to see him, nowhere near as much as you did last year. If something happens to Bijan, all of a sudden the depth chart looks a lot like it did last year, and Algier is the lead dog again. So, there's always that. I do think that he's a great handcuff, but his days of being a fantasy starter, they're unfortunately over for the time being, in my opinion. One question that I do want to pose, and I hope that you can weigh in on this a little bit, is Cordarrelle Patterson's presence in that backfield. They like to go to him around the goal line. I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on, is that going to limit Bijan's upside at all? And especially, with the rotation of running backs, coupled with that, I'm wondering if you guys think that's going to limit Bijan's upside at all.
Man, I don't think so. The moment I seen them take him at 8, I think we're on the same wavelength about a lot of that stuff. About what all you said about the situation, but I don't think it's going to limit him. They took him at 8. It's going to be Bijan.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot less of Cordell and Algier. I think you're going to see a whole lot less of both of them. You don't take a running back at 8 and then have him split carries, at least large amount of carries with other backs. Of course, they'll give him a chance to, rest up at certain points in the game, and you'll see those other two backs. But outside of that, I think you're going to see Bijan. He's got to be the number one back heading forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you guys there. What's up, JC? What's up, Siegel? Happy to have both you guys in, man. Love it. Thank you, everybody that's tuning in. I do wonder, okay, this is a team, okay? Tyler Algier had 17-plus carries the last 4 weeks, and he produced. And this is a run-first team, 32 attempts per game in 2022. So, okay, Algier's not going to get 17-plus, but I can't see this team just dismissing a player who ran with that caliber. And in my mind, I'm thinking about the NFL as a whole. The NFL has turned into a league where teams have 2, 3, 4 running backs, and they will play the guy in the right spot at the right time. And so, although I believe that Bijan has taken the number one role, I really stand on the side of I'm a little cautious of what this does for Bijan because, rookie running backs don't always come into the fold and just have their way with playing time. Now, Bijan does everything well that we think he can. It's like, yes, he could step into that, but the NFL is just not going to dismiss a guy who showed that he can contribute. And so I see the Falcons using both of them. And when I look at 32 attempts, I look at Algier as a guy that we were hoping, all right, hey, 17 plus, I'm taking this guy as like a, RB1 that I can maybe get later possibly, right? Value as an RB1. Now I see that that's not there, but I can't help but think that Algier gets 8+ carries as well as the few others that guys get. I'm not concerned with Cordarrelle in my mind, at least. I think they're going to go away from him. I think that, he kind of came back on the scene. It was exciting. He's older. They don't need to go with that. They might use him in a few gimmicky things. I can see them using him more in the slot this year as another wide receiver with Algier or Bijan on the field. Can use that to make different looks. I don't think he takes away from the carries from either. But will he get a couple here and there? Yes. So now we're up to 10, 11. So all the other 20 are going to go to Bijan every time. I just have a feeling that this kind of caps the value. And to piggyback on Cubby's talk of Bijan going so early in drafts, are you really getting the value that you think he is with this position? I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I think rightfully so. I mean, he's going very early in drafts. He's top 10 in every best ball draft I've done since the draft. So
who was the running back of the Giants when Saquon was drafted? Doesn't matter. It wasn't a guy that had 1,000+ yards is the point.
Right.
That has to come into play a little, right, Charles?
I mean, absolutely. You can't. I definitely see where you're going on that. It worries you because you can't just toss 1,000 yard back. I mean, the guy's only a year into the league. They're going to
Yeah.
use him at some point.
Yeah, I think, a 700-yard, 6-7 touchdowns is very much so within reach for him. And if something happens with Bijan, like I said, he's automatically
Yeah.
very valuable because
So the amount of value, Cubby, that's been given up to get a guy to go get the pick for Bijan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you mortgaging everything to go get this guy in this situation? Did it change before this situation? Do you have as much faith to give up everything to be the running back of your fantasy future after this pick? Where are you? Where were you on mortgaging your future 1 to 10 before the draft? And where are you now on mortgaging your future for Bijan?
That's a great question. I was pretty ready to sell my soul before the draft. I may have changed slightly, but not terribly. I mean, most of my leagues are dynasty, and I don't think much has changed for him in that aspect. I do think you mentioned rookie running backs. They're not always given the full load right out the gate. So we might see quite a bit of Algier when the season starts. And Bijan might earn his keep. So, maybe in redraft, it's not as awesome as it is in dynasty. But I do think by year 2, Algier is far and away the second back if he's still with the Falcons. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. But, yeah, I think Bijan will definitely take that job by the second year easily. So
I agree on that standpoint. I mean, something else you always have to consider when it comes to that is, and I'm knocking on wood right now because I don't want it to happen, and I don't think it's going to with the way Bijan's played in his college career and the way he looks, but Bijan could come in and be a fluke. He could get injured real early. I mean, there's a multiple amount of things that can happen. Me personally, this definitely lowers my willingness to give away the world, him going to the Falcons. I think there's some other teams that I would have been like, yes, let's go. But I'm a little hesitant.
it makes sense. It does.
I like that. I totally get both sides of it. I just feel like from what we've seen from running backs, if you're all of a sudden losing that guarantee year 1 and what we can see after a year, this is a world that we live in the fantasy world that Bijan can go from greatest to least in a heartbeat. And the amount of trades and what I've seen given up to get him, I'm a little scared now. And I already was a little because I just felt like people were giving up way too much to go get a running back position that is dying in this league because of all those risks. And again, we all take a risk when we make moves. So anybody who does it, I get it. Whatever works best for your team, your role, that plays a lot into everything we talk about. And so just to mention that, I mean, anybody with like fantasy roster questions or anything, all that comes into a whole. So please message us, hit up TSA. We'll help you manage that roster because it matters depending on your team. But as a whole, I'm just a little leery of if he's not quite getting that playing time off the bat because of who they have. If he struggles at all, it's easy to shift back. It's kind of that give and take. Like, cool, it's a good running situation, but if you don't play up to par, now it's not as good as being on a bad team where you get all the work. And so I'm a little more into that middle of the road, and I don't want to be in that place for a guy that I'm giving up everything to take with my 101 in a dynasty draft, to your point, Cubby. But if year 1 is a little slower, you feel like barring, injury or something that would obviously set him back, his value is still there moving forward to take that much stock in dynasty wise.
I think everybody still loves him. I don't think that's changed much. And yeah, if you had to flip him, you could get some real nice pieces for him. Everybody still loves him. The Falcons landing spot, it isn't bad. You know what I mean? Algier's there, but the draft capital does matter. The 8th overall selection compared to the 5th round pick, they are going to value that a whole lot more. He's going to get every chance to succeed. It's just like you guys said, there's always the chance of an injury. and then it could really go downhill from there. Something like that happens. Obviously we're looking at a different situation.
I like that. Yeah. But again, he is the guy. So, I mean, would you look at, and we'll move on after this, if you had gotten Bijan, would you look at what you could get for him now after you took him? Would you be interested in possibly moving him if you got the right picks? And would you have moved him ever before? Like, now are you in a spot where you're like, well, let me see if somebody's willing to give up that much more for this, or am I just going to stick with what I got?
I mean, I'm always willing to look at trades. So my league mates, if you're watching, send them over. I'm always willing to look at them. I love to do trades. There's definitely nothing wrong with taking a look and seeing if you can upgrade. He is a prime asset, though. You better get a boatload if you're going to trade him.
I love it. Here we go. Two fat guys. What's up, brother? Appreciate you tuning in, man. Arthur likes his bell cow backs. And then
Yes,
kind
he
of
does.
to piggyback on what you guys were saying, and Charles had a little more concern, but overall, they took him for a reason. Draft capital, 8th pick. They're going to go after him. So I think the other side of that is if you can try to flip Algier for anybody that's more on the other side, do it now.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because he's the guy you might be able to get some value with. You can sell people on the rookie running back. Maybe he struggles. Maybe he doesn't come out the gate. You could probably get more value for Algier right now than what you would get to give up Robinson. Because like you said, you got to get a boatload. But maybe you can find somebody in your league that likes that other side of Algier or has a team that can withstand it. And you can better your team that way by moving Algier.
Yeah. Just something that we've talked about, I think, in our spaces. When the number one guy gets hurt, that number two guy all of a sudden becomes so much more valuable because teams, the further you go down the depth chart, obviously the talent level diminishes a little bit. That's just how it works. That's how they build the team. So when you start to lean on the second, third guy, that guy gets a ton of work because for obvious reasons, you just have to give that guy the load. You don't have a whole lot left else you can turn to. So you might be right about that. You probably could still flip Algier, but maybe even more so during the season. Like when the season starts, if you see that he's getting enough run in the beginning of the season, a little more than Bijan, flip him then. That might be a good idea.
I mean, Algier almost becomes more tempting because of if the possibility that Bijan does go down, Algier's already proven. We already know he can bust out 1,000-yard season. We already know he can put up points.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's why I said he's a great handcuff now because if something like that happens, we already seen what he can do. That's a great point, Charles.
How high are you taking Bijan in a redraft league, Charles? Where is he going in a redraft league? With all those things said, right? Are you reaching for him?
I think so far I would still probably reach a little for him. I don't think I would. I mean, I'm not going to take him too high, but I think I would reach for him a little bit still. I still have the confidence there.
Let's look at this real quick before we move on. Before the draft, JC, I remember him talking about this. I traded my 101, 304, and 307 for 102, 105, 202. I made a buttload off Bijan before draft. Yeah, that's a freaking haul, JC. So you lost the 101 and the 3 and the 3, but got back to 1-1. I mean, the 3 players you get back in that threesome right there, 102, 105, 202. Yeah, you're speaking my language. And for me, I'm a big believer of give me guys that I don't know. I'm good with that. Give me the guys that I can get now that I've seen produce. I'm good with rookies coming in, having their way. Bijan may be a Hall of Famer, but if I can load my team with proven players that are young and can produce for the next 10 years, I'm gonna go that route personally. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, yeah. Why wouldn't you?
I'm not the guy to give that up, but it'll be interesting to see. We will continue to roll this out. But like you said, Cubby, I mean, we talk about Deontay Foreman, a no-name guy who came on the scene and had a very good fantasy year and now is in a place where we're not really sure what's going to happen with him. Khalil Herbert, they took Roshan Johnson, but all of a sudden he had a great year and now he's signing for $3 million and the Bears are letting go of a guy that costs, 10 million plus. That's the NFL we live in. And so on top of that, if you're not producing, it's not hard to move on to the next guy. And what your draft capital is matters. And one name to talk about that, we can put a pin in that, is Pacheco. As good as he's been, he's a 7th round pick. Andy Reid's not one to play around. So we'll get to that probably on another show. But let's get into quarterbacks of this draft, okay? We talked about 5 possibly going in the first round. We ended up having 3 go in the first round. Mr. Mayonnaise in his coffee, banana peel eating Will Levis, who you guys know I actually probably like more than most. He dropped down. Hendon Hooker dropped down. I'm okay with that because personally I feel like nowadays, we talked about this, we reach up for quarterbacks, and I feel like at least one of these other guys was probably a 2nd-round project, if not deeper. And even the other guys I'm not sold on, but that's the world we live in. So, Charles, give me your take on the quarterbacks and kind of your biggest takeaway from that group and how it all played out.
I'm just going to say I called it. I knew the Panthers were going to take Bryce Young. Houston went with C.J. Stroud. All the rumors and speculation about him and Houston not lining up, man, they was calling our bluff. They just didn't want us to know.
Right.
I like where all 3 of those guys went. I did say that Levis would end up with the Titans, and look where he ended up. I think they got him for a much better deal coming in the 2nd round. I think I like Hendon Hooker on the Lions. I believe that's where he went, Detroit.
Yep.
I like that. I think he can learn a lot under Jared Goff and eventually come out to be the QB1 in that system. I give Goff maybe another year or 2, but yeah, I like it. That was actually the main part of the first, section of the draft that I was like, okay, this makes sense to me outside of the rest of it.
Yeah, I love it. We both nailed a couple of those landing spots. The Hendon Hooker going to Detroit, that's exactly where I wanted to see him end up. And I'm really excited for him. He gets to sit behind Goff and learn. And when he's ready, I feel like he can plug and play. I mean, he'll be pretty decent in that offense with all them playmakers around him. I don't see why it can't be decent. But yeah, the CJ Stroud thing, man, that was, they did the thing that we thought that they wouldn't do, but we thought they should do. So, there was a lot of that speculation that Young was going to go 1 and then Stroud, wasn't going to work with Houston and they were going to pass on him. Whoever put that smoke out there, A+, man, because I'm sure there's a lot of teams that thought they might have a shot at Stroud and not a chance. Wise man swoops in and picks him. I love that decision by Houston. It seems like a great way to start off a coaching tenure for DeMeco. I'm definitely rooting for him. He's one of our guys, 49er fans. But yeah, he's got his franchise quarterback now. The defense will be better right away. And as far as Stroud goes in fantasy, I think it's a bit of a wait and see. I don't think he's going to be great in fantasy in year 1. Probably has some growing pains as a starter as he gets acclimated to the system, all his new targets, poor offensive line play, and stuff like that. That all that's going to play a role. But I was very excited about Anthony Richardson. I mean, that's exactly where I wanted him to go, was the Colts. For all the reasons we already talked about, him and Steichen are the perfect pairing. Shane has worked with Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, also Phillip Rivers, 3 very different quarterbacks, so we know that he can adapt his scheme and have success with different types of guys. Well, now he's handpicked someone and he gets to tailor his scheme to that guy. This is going to be exciting. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how it goes.
On the sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say on the Stroud thing, we did talk about, though, he was probably the most start ready, at least in my opinion. I know we talked about that before. I think he could actually have more success in year 1 than people think. Now, I agree with you. I think there's going to be some growing pains. I mean, there is with any first-year quarterback that's thrust into a starting job, and we know he's going to be the starter. There's no way Davis Mills has the QB1 job week 1. But he is the purest straight pocket passer. I think he's going to distribute the football, which is going to equal fantasy points. So I think he has more success than people think. Do I think he's going to be like crazy good? Probably not. I agree with you on there, but something to look forward to. And I do love the Anthony Richardson thing.
Shout out Davis Mills, though. The 1 week I needed him was that top 10 week against the Raiders, baby. That's all you needed. You faced the Raiders last year, you're almost guaranteed top 10. So thank you, Davis Mills, for that. But I like Stroud in Houston. I think that a guy like him who has the head on his shoulders and has the more QB ready play, to have a guy like Dalton Schultz, to have Dameon Pierce, I think a guy like DeMeco Ryans too at the helm, where he comes from as a player and as a coach from a Shanahan tree and a Niners organization. You guys already know what I feel about the Niners, but as an organization, like, give me all of DeMeco Ryans and I'll put my trust in that man.
Absolutely.
So,
without a doubt.
And that's why that other trade didn't surprise me, because I thought, like, why is this defensive man not getting Will Anderson at 2? But they had tricks up their sleeve to get the man at 3. And so DeMeco Ryans already out here playing chess, not checkers. And if you think DeMeco Ryans didn't have anything to do with getting the quarterback and his guy on defense, I believe
he 100%
that you're sorely mistaken. That's
Yes,
just my opinion. And I don't want to underestimate this man. I remember him on the field. Me and DeMeco are good until he proves me wrong otherwise, because everything I've seen DeMeco put his hand at, he's succeeded. And I think for him to take this Houston job with the way the hirings and firings had gone, he also sees something there. I don't think DeMeco Ryans is a stupid individual that wouldn't take this job. I think they have pieces there. Now, even that Schultz signing, you've got a tight end and a safety valve. You've got a running game. There's a little bit to work with there. And in a division that, I mean, let's be honest, any one of these 4 teams could win it. I know Jacksonville's great, but there's been plenty of years where teams have regressed after improving.
Yeah. Go ahead, Charles.
I was just going to say, to me, I really think that he went into that job and he went into this draft knowing how the previous years have went with, like you said, SoCal, with the hiring situations and everything and the firings that's gone with it. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go out here and build a team. I mean, and he started off pretty good, in my opinion.
What do you think about this question here, Cubby?
Do you feel like they gave up too much future value to move back up to 3? No, because I feel like they went and got their guy. DeMeco is trying to improve that defense, and I think they're going to improve dramatically year 1. And that was part of it, getting after the quarterback. And that's exactly what they're going to do with him. Also can't discount, he's pretty good against the run. So I think it's Will Anderson is a solid player. So if you're going to move up in the draft and give up that much, he's the kind of guy that you want to do that for. What do you guys think?
So my take on this is they moved up and gave up a little extra to get the guy they want. And I talk about this with my 16-year-old son learning fantasy. He talks about trades, and it's like, and I'm like, dude, are you getting the guys you want? Is your team better than it was before you made this deal? Are you happy with that? Then it's the right deal. I got no other answers for you, because that's really the truth. And in this case, the Texans got their quarterback and got their defense. So, yes, they're playing with it. It has to work or it sets them back. But I think if you're going to do it, this is the way to do it. Get the best defensive guy on the board, and you get the most proven quarterback at the same time. So, in that sense, I like it. Is it a risk? It's always a risk. Look at how many first-round picks are bust. Half the NFL is undrafted players. You're taking risk in the 4th, 5th, 6th round even, right? Because really, there's probably better players on the street. We can talk about this before we end. How about the guy that just signed with the Niners? I mean, puts out a tweet video. So there's so many athletic, talented players that can add to this game with the amount of injuries and things we see from practice squads, that you're always taking a risk with any draft move. But I think this was the time to make it. And I also think they gave up a lot less than Carolina did to get Bryce Young. And they're leaving this with a quarterback and the best defensive player.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Same wavelength here. I mean, they got both of that was what I was going to say. They got both of their guys.
Mm-hmm.
Mission accomplished.
Figure it out later, right? I mean, you have to have that approach to some extent. And as we've talked about with the Carolina thing, was you made this move giving up 2 first-rounders and a DJ Moore without trying to go get a Lamar type player. Maybe he wasn't there, but without giving up DJ Moore. Like, to me, you gave up way too much without even trying, and gave up way too much anyway. But Houston gave up what it took, and I think it's the right move to take a shot.
Yeah, I agree.
What are your other takes, Cubby? I know you got some QB things to share with us as well.
Hey, I mean, I think Bryce Young is going to be pretty good right away. If everything else fails around him, he's going to rely on his legs, and he's very smart about when to use that part of his game. I think the size concerns are overblown. Any quarterback is a risk to get hurt. We know this. We see it every year. If they take a big enough hit, they're going to miss games. Young isn't much different just because he's smaller. You have to protect your quarterback. Now, the great thing is, going to Carolina, they've got a lot of continuity on an offensive line that was pretty good last year. So, and they surprised some people. They weren't expected to be as good as they were, but they did play very well. They kept pretty much everybody. And I think that's going to help him a lot, and keep him healthy. But even when things break down, we know he's a heck of a processor. He thrives when it breaks down around him. So when he's stressed, he's going to be scrambling around, extending plays, throwing up balls to Shark. Adam Thielen, he could still get open. I shared a tweet earlier showing that under the preview for the show that Charles shared. Sure, he's lost a step, you know what I mean? But he could still get open, and he's always been good at getting open off schedule, which is Bryce Young's calling. So I think those two will work well together. Jonathan Mingo, he's another great fit, I'm excited to see those two grow alongside each other. While Mingo figures out the nuances of being a pro receiver, if they just do the things that he's good at, that fits Young's strengths. So I think that the first several picks of the draft were great. It got a little weird after that, but as far as where the quarterbacks went, they went exactly where we thought they would in the beginning, before all those weird, rumors got tossed out there. I, of course, thought Stroud would be the pick for the Panthers because Reich has always worked with taller quarterbacks. But they fell in love with Young, and they went and got their guy. I'm excited about all the quarterbacks. I'm actually more excited about Will Levis now than I was pre-draft. And there's a few reasons for that. We've seen how when you fall in the draft, that can light a fire under players. I'm really hoping that's what happens with Levis. I do like the landing spot. I like the style of ball that they play in Tennessee. They got a great coach. It's a good organization. I think they're going to put him in a position to succeed, and, I don't like the Josh Allen comp, but what is the way that he's most like Allen when he's doing that, bull rush, design quarterback runs? I think they're going to do a lot of that with him in Tennessee if he gets a chance. And I don't see any reason why he won't. He's going to sit behind Tannehill until he's ready. And I just think it's a great situation for him. I'm really happy with where a lot of the quarterbacks went. I think it's just great. We have a lot to be excited about as far as they're concerned.
So where is your value on, obviously, Stroud, Young, Richardson, we expect fantasy production. They're going to get a chance. It kind of, as long as they were going to play, which we knew they would, they're going to go where they're going to go in rookie drafts. But now we're looking at a guy in Will Levis and Hendon Hooker who are sitting behind starting quarterbacks. Where are you taking them in these rookie dynasty drafts?
Well, I haven't done a ton yet, but when I do, I'm going to be, looking for Levis probably early second, end of the first. We're going to see where he goes, where he slips to, how things are going with the drafts. You always have to feel it out. Obviously, if the first 3 picks off the board are quarterbacks, then Levis is probably going soon, and Hooker not far behind him, or maybe even before, depending on who likes who. But yeah, there's a lot of value there, even though they have to sit behind these other guys. I don't think that they did that. These teams did that for no reason. I think they saw something in these players, and they do plan on developing them, and eventually giving them a shot at the starting role. And, if you can get a guy like that and wait on, in the second round maybe, and wait on him a year, that's fantastic.
I agree with everything he said. I definitely see him going more. I think Levis will probably go more mid-second, unless, like SoCal was saying, if or I don't remember which one of you said it, but if you see a bunch of quarterbacks going right off the top, he's going to go earlier, probably into the first round. But I agree, everything.
So we had, the draft that we are currently in, right? We have Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Bryce Young going back to back at 1-3, 1-4, and 1-5. With Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs occupying the first 2 spots. Will Levis went 1-7. Hendon Hooker went 2.8. So just to go back to your point, those 3 guys were gone. Somebody wants a quarterback. And again, to piggyback on the point of what we talk about, what you need, I'm not the biggest. The person who took Anthony Richardson at 1-3 was me. And we've talked about it. I'm not the biggest Anthony Richardson fan overall. But in a fantasy world, if I can get that freak of an athlete in a starting role, I'll take the 1-1 on that guy. I'll just take my chances. But it's funny because I don't see him long-term as an NFL quarterback. I just don't. I know that he could get it right, but I'm not buying into this full turn of those quarterbacks taking over because we haven't seen it yet. And we've had questions posed recently about like Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields. Of course, I think Justin Fields is the more freak of an athlete and the more potential and the more exciting. But if you're asking me who I want to win football games for the next 10 years, I am still kind of in that boat of somebody who plays the traditional style overall from what I've seen. Will that change? It may. Am I open to it? Hell yeah, I'm open to it. But if my fantasy team didn't really need a quarterback, seeing that my QB1 is Russell Wilson in a super flex, and I am a big Wilson bounce back guy, but, still, like, I needed a quarterback. So for me, it was if Richardson gets drafted in a starting role, I'm taking Richardson regardless of my pick. Now, if I had 2 proven quarterbacks, I probably would have gone like Will Anderson. So, it just changes on where you're at. But with Hendon Hooker and Will Levis, my thing is, I don't know how much production you get out of Young, Stroud, and Richardson year 1. Maybe more Richardson with the running game, but compared to what you get from the other 2 guys and what you'll get moving forward, if that makes sense. Like, you might not get as much playing time year 1, but Levis could legit sit 1 year and go right into that role. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, Ryan Tannehill was a bum 3 years ago. He's been one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the league the last 2+ seasons. In the league. Go look at the points. I don't care if you watch this now on the recording and you're like, he's crazy. Go look at what Tannehill's done as a fantasy quarterback since he took over the Titans when healthy. And so if you are capable, and that's why I like these guys like Levis and Hooker, I think that they are ready to be quarterbacks above the shoulders. And for me, that weighs a lot more. So with that being said, if Goff plays well and Hendon Hooker has to wait 2 or 3 years, what do you think about that? Where does that put you with his value moving forward if you've got to wait 2 or 3 seasons? Or are you a believer that Goff, like Charles said, maybe only has 1 season left?
Well, I heard they're trying to extend him. So that might, change things a little bit. But, like we talked about in episode 2, Hooker doesn't have a lot of time to sit and learn. He's already super mature. He's like 25 years old. So, quarterbacks can play well into their 30s, obviously. But they do like to see them get their start, typically before 25. So I do think if we're going to see him, we're going to see him in the next couple of years. And if we don't, we might not, if that makes sense.
I guess that's why I made that point with them going from Goff. You have to think Detroit knows that.
Right.
Obviously, they know his age, so you have to be thinking: are they, is this a transition thing, and we're going to see Goff get moved in the next year or two? Because if Hendon Hooker goes into training camp and just looks like a freaking superstar in Detroit, I don't care how proven you are to Goff or how strong you hold him. You just drafted a 25-year-old possible superstar athlete at quarterback. You got to go with the best play.
I like where you're going with that. I mean, that's the thing is I think Goff could have another year or two for sure. He gave him that leash. He's good. He can do it. But I think Hendon Hooker has the skill set. I already told you guys, I like Hendon Hooker and Levis over all three of the other guys, to be honest. I'm very in the minority on that, but to me, they're more NFL ready. And I like the situations they went into. You're telling me that Levis gets a year behind Tannehill, and then he gets Treylon Burks, Okonkwo, and whatever else they do. I'm okay with that, especially with a Vrabel-led team, an organization that seems to put guys in place. I like that. And I like that more than a guy who gets thrust into the role. And with Hendon Hooker, if Goff is the guy for 2-3 years, yeah, it might hurt him. But if he's not, you're getting a guy, like you said, Charles, who has shown he was probably the second best quarterback before his ACL injury. He can throw the ball. There's weapons there. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't get rattled and run first. And to piggyback on the point of some of these phenom guys like Richardson and Fields and Lamar, like they are run first before they learn how to play. If they get to the point where they learn, i.e. Mahomes, i.e. Hurts, watch out. There's no answer. But how many guys have gotten to that point? So for me, I still like these situations better, and I think the other guys will be great. They'll be okay. They'll learn. I don't know if they'll ever blossom into it. I still am going to say that 10 years from now, Hendon Hooker and Will Levis have a better NFL career than all three of these other quarterbacks.
All right. Yeah, and a lot has been said about Anthony Richardson and how far he has to go to become a competent quarterback in the NFL as far as throwing the ball is concerned. I don't think he's as far off as most people think. He's definitely got some mechanical issues that's going to help with some of the accuracy stuff. But even some of the accuracy talk, we have to take a closer look at this. I think I touched on it in episode 2. His average depth of target is 11.6 yards. That's fourth highest in the country. And there's 131 FBS teams. He's slinging the ball. He's not dinking and dunking. Now, the one thing that I think that he is going to struggle with and might take him some time to learn or might not ever be great at is throwing with touch. I mean, the kid's got an absolute missile for an arm, and he throws it that way most of the time. So he's going to need to learn to put more touch and have accuracy with that touch on the ball. And that might be his biggest challenge. But as far as like doing what pro quarterbacks do, Richardson scrambles. He keeps his eyes downfield. He is looking to throw before he runs, but then you can also design the runs for him. I just think that like, if this goes the way that I think it's going to go, and it very well should, because the stuff that he's got issues with, Steichen has fixed for other quarterbacks before. So there's a very good probability that he fixes some of these things, and he might not be the greatest passer that we've ever seen, but he can fix that stuff and be an outstanding fantasy quarterback. I mean, QB1 overall potential, really. So, Anthony Richardson, if I had the 101, I'm not taking Bijan anymore. I'm taking Anthony Richardson. There, I said it.
I can't disagree. And 100%, I can't disagree. He has the QB1 potential without a doubt. And I agree with everything you said. Those inconsistencies, those issues, his coach can fix. This dude might just go off and surprise everybody. So, and on SoCal, on your point, when we're on episode 500 or whatever, 10 years from now, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to write it down somewhere and stick it on a sticky note. We're going to look back at this,
And
video.
I'll add on to that be based on what you guys are saying and where I believe the potential is there, but I'm not at that point in my analysis to let that potential change what I think quite yet. I do believe that Richardson has the potential to be better than those other two I have than Young and Stroud, because I think there's safer plays that have a cap ceiling where Richardson is the guy that if he figures this out, holy shit. I mean, like Lamar, like Fields, like Mahomes, like Hurts, that's there. So anytime I know that's there, I'm going to be a little careful with what I say because when that turns on, there's no stopping it. I don't think Stroud or Young they don't have the capability to turn into, none of these four other guys have the capability to turn into what Richardson could turn into. Just like these other guys don't have the capability to turn into what Lamar and these guys are. I just am concerned still with, the depth per target and things like that. And even Steichen is, you've got athletes, you play in a pretty weak conference, you're throwing to an area and you're not accurate. And now in the NFL, you're forced on the run. If you're not running first, that's great, but you're throwing to a window, not an area. That does take a lot of work. Even a guy like Josh Allen, his completion percentages overall were better. But if there's a guy that can fix it, it is Shane Steichen. And I mean, like I said, I just took Richardson at the 103. I'm buying into the fantasy side. 150%. I'm banking on Richardson to be a fantasy machine this year. But 10 years from now, will he have had a better NFL career than Hooker and Levis? He could have a killer 2 fantasy years, and that answer could still be no.
That's true.
So that's kind of the give and take with that. But Richard, I mean, I think what we've seen with Lamar, Hurts, Fields, why not go Richardson at 101? And even more with kind of the Bijan talk at what he's going to get and what the value of running backs. I like that take. Other than quarterbacks, I think we're pretty good there. What do you guys? Let's get into a few more topics here. Let's go, Charles. What's your first takeaway from the draft outside of what we've talked about so far?
All right, let's hit it up. I've got three that I'm very, very happy with. A lot of people might disagree. My first one is Dalton Kincaid. Went to Buffalo. I think it's a monster pick. I think it's a great pick for Buffalo. Let's be honest. It's the AFC. You can say whatever you want, the old football types, defense wins championships. Well, you got to get there first. And in order to win in the AFC, you have to have a monster offense. And why not give Josh Allen another target behind Diggs? Diggs can't do it all by himself. And I think, with Kincaid, we've talked about this before. He is probably the most solid tight end in terms of the receiving game going into the draft. He's a sure target. I think he's going to go in. He's going to make an immediate impact for the league and for us as fantasy owners. I think he's going to be a big deal.
Charles, what does he do for this Buffalo team that Dawson Knox wasn't doing?
I think he's just more reliable, and I think he's going to be more proven, and I think he's going to show that on the field.
I like that. What do you think about that, Cubby?
Yeah, I think he's far and away the better player. Knox is good, but, Kincaid has better hands, and I think you can use him in more creative ways. I think you're going to see plenty of Kincaid in the slot this year. They don't really have, that spot necessarily nailed down. There's Khalil Shakir might take it. They signed Trent Sherfield, I think, and not really sure who's going to take that spot. But I really wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of Kincaid in that, in the slot this year. So I like the pick a lot. I do.
You said in the slot, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Check this. Boom. Two fat guys. I mean, Nicely done,
Hey,
guys. Way to be in tune on that. And I love that because, right, Knox is a good player, but he's just what he is. Kind of that safety role, safety valve. He doesn't expand the offense. He doesn't do anything extra. And now you've expanded on that with Kincaid, and you've developed that additional role. And he added this, and I love this because I am not a Gabe Davis fan. I'm a Gabe Davis no man. I don't think Gabe Davis is the guy. He's a poor man's Deshaun Jackson in my book. I don't even think he's as good as guys like that who give you that much boom or bust. I think he's bust with an occasional boom. Can he fix that? Yeah, he can. If he's still in the league, you can fix it. But now you don't have to worry about that as much. Maybe you can change how you use that. I love Kincaid. You get a guy that can make plays, yards after the catch, a guy that can take away from Diggs in the middle, just makes him that much more explosive. Side note on the Buffalo question here, and we're seeing this with, and maybe even Kincaid, maybe this will limit him. Is Josh Allen holding on to the ball too much? Are running backs not thriving in Buffalo because he doesn't want to dump it off? Are they getting turnovers and losing possessions because he's become a guy that, as great as he is starting to just run every time and make it happen himself? And when he doesn't do that, he seems to be making some turnovers. Small sample size towards the end of the season, but still, and I know he was hurt, but there's factors of all those things. Do you guys have any concerns with any of that with him and Buffalo moving forward?
I think the elbow injury played a big role in that last year because he was really slinging it before that happened. I don't know if we see the same thing we've seen down the stretch, this year. If we do, I think we start being a little more concerned about it. But in the beginning of the season last year, Buffalo was throwing the ball all over the place. I'm not too concerned with that. What about you, Charles?
Yeah, I blamed it more on the elbow injury. It did seem like he was getting a little frantic, a little antsy, which worries me a little bit. You never want to see a quarterback get antsy, especially not somebody of his caliber, and we know what he can do. I'm hoping that, rounded back to Kincaid, I'm hoping that Kincaid provides some stability to that offense and that more reliable target that will kind of help him calm down and give him a little bit more confidence that we've seen kind of disappear with that injury.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Where do you see Kincaid finishing on tight ends? Let's just go full PPR.
Well, with the state of the tight end position, he definitely has a chance to be a tight end 2 right away and maybe sneak into tight end 1 territory. I mean, it wouldn't be hard for him to do that. And we were looking forward to seeing what this tight end class can do. Unfortunately, a few of them went to some weird spot. Two of them went to Green Bay, so that was weird. But
one might be good.
Right. We can probably count on one of them, having some fantasy value, but both is a stretch. But yeah, Kincaid, I think, is no doubt going to succeed. He went to a great spot out of the tight ends. Also really happy with, now that I'm trying to say it, the name escapes me. The kid who went to Detroit.
Laporta.
From Laporta,
Laporta.
Sorry. Yeah. So really excited for him too. I thought that was an excellent spot as well. I don't mean to go off of the Kincaid talk, but yeah.
So where is Kincaid's, give me a ranking, his floor and his ceiling? Man. You can change this before the season starts. We will revisit all these before the season starts.
Trying to think of the other tight ends that will likely finish ahead of him.
Do you have a thought on that, Charles, why he thinks? If not, you guys can think about it. I'll fill the space here a little bit with a little Laporta talk. I mean, obviously, any tight end going to Detroit, just like Kincaid, you've got an offensive skill set. Now you're in an offense that featured, and we talked about this. We talked about Detroit trading Hawkinson maybe before they realized they were a better team. And had they not traded him 3-4 weeks later, if that's the case, and it was because of where they thought they were going, and now you add Laporta into that offense, but he can be a target, I can see him being used big time as well. So I love adding that weapon there, especially you've lost kind of that deep threat with Jameson for the first half of the year with the gambling. Maybe you switch it up, kind of keep that tight end to keep things honest up front. And hopefully that opens up, more of the deep game. And let's not forget about Josh Reynolds. Him and Jared Goff have been a partnership. I'm not saying he's a stud, but he's a guy that Goff likes. So with him, Amon-Ra, they've talked about using Jahmyr Gibbs in the receiving role as well. So if you have Montgomery in the back and Gibbs in the slot, Laporta at tight end, I like the creativity. I don't know how it fits from a perfect sense of NFL, stability, but I think it gives them some creativity. And if it was a lack of not using Hawkinson, I'm a little scared. If it was a lack of just getting rid of him too soon and they want to use that position, I can see it. But I'm just not sure where they go with that. But love to hear your thoughts there. But if you guys have those ranking spots, I do want to hear those too.
Who you want to go first, Cubby? You want me to hit it?
Yeah, I was just going to say with Laporta, I think, probably top 6, 7 is his ceiling. It's hard to see him jumping over some of the guys that we look to every year, to produce on our fantasy teams at the tight end position. Tight end can be tough, obviously. I mean, it always is. It's not that it can be. Tight end is a tough position for rookies to come in and produce year one. But if he gets that slot role, I think we will see, him creep up into tight end 1 territory. I would say his floor is probably somewhere around, tight end 3, like tight end, 25 or something like that. But I got to think they took him in the first round for a reason, and we're not going to even go anywhere near that floor.
I like that, Charles. Before we go to you, is kind of going back to what we said about, was it like lack of wanting to use Hawkinson or just not using him? To take a guy in the first round, it leads me to believe it's more that you do want to use that position and you realize you probably shouldn't have let Hawk go, but doesn't matter. You did what you did, so replace it and move on. Should be encouraged by that based on what Cubby said there. So what do you think about that, Charles? And then we'll take your Laporta take. We'll take your floor and ceiling on Kincaid, and then we'll go back to Cubby for the Kincaid ranking.
I'm on the same wavelength as you guys. I think it's a good pick. I think it's interesting to see what he's going to do. I'm very close to where Cubby is. I think his ceiling's going to be more 7, 8, maybe even 9. But he very well could surprise us. This is the NFL. These people could, the people we thought were going to suck are going to turn around and be tight end 2, 3, 4. And then, you just don't know. On Kincaid, I think his ceiling is very high. I think he's right now, I'm going to say tight end 2. I don't think he quite takes that tight end 1 yet, but he could easily be as low as, I don't know, I'm thinking probably like somewhere between 11 and 15.
Okay. I was actually talking about Kincaid when I was saying my rankings. With Laporta, it's a very interesting situation because, like you said, they lost Jameson Williams. DJ Chark moved on in free agency. There's a lot of air yards available in Detroit right now. I think Laporta is going to get a shot, and he might be able to produce well year one. I don't really think they have a ton of options. They're going to be hesitant to put him on the field because he's got to grow as a blocker, but he's another guy that if they use him creatively, put him out there in the slot, get him some free releases, don't use him in line so much. He could sneak into tight end 1 territory. I think you're right around the right spot for the ceiling, Charles. I think, 7 to 9 is a good, ceiling for him. Kincaid, like I said, I could see him around 6, possibly a little bit higher, but, I don't know if he's going to hop over George Kittle. And I don't know if he's going to, it sure seems like Darren Waller has a great shot to be one of the top tight ends this year, but health is always a question with him. Like Charles was saying, some of the guys that we talk, that we rely on every year, they have just as much potential to fall outside that tight end 1 territory as anybody else does. It could be because of injuries or whatever, poor quarterback play, who knows? But yeah, I don't know. I am very excited about these two. I think they landed in great spots. Hopefully we have another couple tight ends that we can start drafting every year here.
And just like you were saying about the on like Darren Waller, it's like, you've got a guy in Daniel Bellinger that was getting 5+ targets when he was in there that they liked. Are the Giants going to run a 2 tight end set to better their offense, or are they going to cater to one of these guys? None of us have a damn clue on what that's going to look like right now. And that's going to play a big role, because if Bellinger turns into like a half snap share blocking tight end with 1 target, and you're telling me Waller's going to get 3 to 4 more targets, oh crap. I mean, Saquon in the backfield, Daniel Jones improving. Yeah, I might want some Darren Waller, but I'm definitely hesitant. And just to kind of piggyback on, that leaves the unknown, but it also leaves a chance for guys like this to slide in. One quick note on Laporta: the Lions had 12 touchdowns to their tight ends, even with Hawk not producing and not being there. 12 touchdowns to their tight ends with a team that had no tight end. Brock Wright, if you want an interesting number to look at, that's the number. I'm going to leave it at that. Go do your homework. Hit me up. My DMs are open. We can have a conversation about why that matters. No tight end there. They scored 12 touchdowns. You now have an option. That's worth looking into.
That's Cubby, a fire stat. Love that stat.
Give me, and it's surprising. I was shocked when I read it. I had to refresh and make sure I was still looking at the Lions, because I really couldn't believe it based on the lack of how they used Hawk, when the trade was, and who they had after. But it shows you that offense creates an opening for that position. So 2 things will happen. The need is there to fill. And when that happens, yeah, they might come in on that. But then what does that do for the rest of the game? For Gibbs, for Montgomery, for Amon-Ra. So either way, he's playing a role. And then when that happens, you still have to adjust back to those guys like Amon-Ra. Because I promise you're not doubling Laporta before you double Amon-Ra St. Brown. So even if teams are like, oh shit, tight ends being used, it won't matter because the playmakers are there. So just a little added, frosting for that right there. Like I said, look into those tight end targets that Detroit was looking into, because now they have a tight end to maybe fill that in Matt Laporta. Cubby, what is your biggest takeaway from the draft, my man?
Well, it's hard to pick a single one
outside of what we talked about.
But I'll just go with one of my favorite ones, Josh Downs. I think it's an outstanding situation that he landed in. The team has been looking for the complement to Michael Pittman, and they got themselves a great one. They have, a great duo now. Anthony Richardson is going to love Josh Downs. He's good at adjusting to the ball in the air. So he can maybe bail him out a little bit while he's trying to figure out some of those mechanics and fixing the accuracy stuff. The footwork issues. Reggie Wayne, one of the greatest wide receivers I've ever had the pleasure of watching, said he was the best wide receiver in the draft, and he was ecstatic to get him. And I know he can't wait to work with him. So, I think Reggie knows a thing or two about playing the wide receiver position in the NFL. Josh is going to make an instant impact in fantasy if the Colts find a way to get him enough volume. And, obviously that's not a guarantee with a rookie quarterback, especially if he starts right away. I think they're going to lean on the run game a lot, but Josh is great at finding the soft spots in his own, especially if you're in a league that awards points to first downs. Josh is going to be excellent. You might want to temper your expectations a little bit in redraft, but year one, but you could do worse as a flyer pick in those leagues too. So
I think you could get Downs in a redraft really, really, really late.
Yeah.
We're talking about a Colts team that has a Michael Pittman who had 100 targets and people are disappointed in. And on that note, if Richardson gets it together at all, or a quarterback in Indy, Michael Pittman is a wide receiver 1. Anybody who thinks differently, I disagree with. We don't have to go into that too much, but Michael Pittman is the man. He's the man, which adds to Josh Downs' help. And I love it. If Richardson can find those holes, if Richardson can be a half decent completion percentage guy year one and look to make those strides, yeah, watch out for this offense, man. Pittman, Downs, Jonathan Taylor, the number one running back from a year before, an offensive line that was good, a defense that's been top 15 the last 5+ years. This team, we can't forget that the Colts they were trying let's find a QB to take us there 1 year at a time. I don't fault them for that. It worked out okay the first year, worked out okay with Rivers. It didn't work out okay this year. And I applaud them for saying, never mind. Okay, we're done with that route. Let's go for a new quarterback. I like what the Colts did with that. I think it was the right move. You had a win now window and you tried to address it. And now you're moving forward. And so now you move from that window to no Ryan, no Rivers, no Wentz, but you've got Richardson and Downs piggybacking with Taylor and Pittman, a defense with Leonard. I mean, that, in a division, again, that isn't very spoken for, right? A Jaguar regression will not be surprising. They play a 4th place schedule last year. They now play a 1st place schedule. They were 4th in turnovers. They won a lot of close games. Don't be surprised if those things change. Not because Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville's not good. That's just the way the NFL works. So I like Downs, and I think in a redraft league or even an auction league, I got Garrett Wilson last year in a keeper league of guys that have played for years for $1. I promise you can get Josh Downs for $1 if you wait in your auction leagues, and you can wait till probably 13th plus redraft round to snag him.
I mean, why not? I mean, the potential for them is absolutely nuts. And y'all went into what I was going to say when he said Downs. I'm like, but you got to think he's got what we said is quite possibly the number one fantasy potential quarterback in this whole draft. These could go off. You could have Pittman and Downs on both sides. I think Downs could be a wide receiver too there. Easy. And they're going to get a ton of targets. And if Richardson picks up and does what we all expect him to do, could be insane. And to get him late, that would be a steal. And you probably will be able to get him late. And I think it'll pay off. I love it.
I also like the Colts, Jelani Woods. I mean, these aren't star-studded guys around them, but the Colts have plenty there to have a decent season. Like I said, don't forget what they were the last few years before this year. That was just a shit show. Quarterback was a shit show. Sam Ehlinger, Matt Ryan. You fire, Frank Wright, which was the wrong move anyway. They made him the scapegoat. Frank Wright is a great coach. And you lose Taylor all year long. To me, that's a wash. Will not be surprised if this Colts team finds a way to float around 500, and obviously could be better depending on Anthony Richardson. I'm going to temper my expectations to 500 or maybe a little below because I don't know if I believe in him long term. But as far as fantasy production, they can be 8 and 9 and put up numbers all year long.
Yeah, to your point, just quick about Reich, things really went downhill for him after Luck retired. I mean, that you can't discount that. I don't know if he's the greatest coach in the world, but you've got to consider that. They were doing pretty well before Andrew Luck retired, and it's been downhill for him ever since. So,
and he's done well with quarterbacks. Now, they did go right by bringing in Steichen to help, because if you're not going to use Frank Reich for a quarterback coach, I mean, there aren't many other options. Like, he's done well, but
yeah.
Which we don't have to go into this, but even Frank Reich now, which is Carolina, there's word that he wanted Stroud, not Young. Funny, two fat guys just said this on that, but I want to get to his other comment first. But as I said that, does Reich impact your thoughts on Bryce Young at all? We'll get to that. Love two fat guys, man. Well, again, we appreciate you chiming in, man. Love it. We love you adding to our draft analysis and projections too, man. You're helping us think. So I like this question here, and I like it for Marvin Mims, but you guys check this out. And Charles, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Cubby.
Same way. I like it for Mims, but not so much for Rice.
Why not Rice?
I just think Mims has still got more. He's got more upside, in my opinion. I'm not real strong on either one of them, but I'm more on Mims than I am Rice.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't super high on them. I mean, I like them both, but had them going later in the draft and later in fantasy drafts before the actual draft happened, but now that they've given them some draft capital, we've got to pay attention. They obviously like these guys and they believe in them. I'm really interested to see what happens with Denver's receiving corps. There was some talk about them trading some players away. None of that ever transpired. So it's pretty crowded there right now. But maybe during the season or before the season starts, we see some movement there and things open up a little bit more for Mims. But I am a little bit higher on him, just like you two are.
Yeah, I'm a little higher on Mims because of, KC is just, it's hard to know what they're going to do, right? And
right.
Tony's coming back, right? We don't know what they're doing at the running back position fully. Anybody who goes to KC, you always have your eye on, because if Mahomes start to use them, what can be done in that offense. But we don't know if Rice is going to get that role. So when I'm looking long-term, I got to wait and see with Rice. If I'm looking at Mims, I'm looking at a guy that we've talked about, like you just said. Denver looked at moving their receivers. And I understand even Judy, because we talk about value, right? Judy's going to be on his way out. There's younger guys. I get it. Judy is that man. Judy's the wide receiver one. He is a wide receiver one. He is when he plays it. I don't like Courtland Sutton. I don't think he has one of the worst separation rates in the NFL. He doesn't get open, doesn't hold on, doesn't catch the ball when he is. I think that this pick was because if we don't trade Sutton, we're just going to use Mims anyway. And Mims will be the wide receiver 2 in Denver. Mims will have a better year than Courtland Sutton. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't know what that means he turns into, but Mims is having a better year than Courtland Sutton, and Judy will be the one. I hope Judy stays healthy. Obviously, health comes into play. We all know that when we talk about this. Don't come at me that Judy sucked when he missed 9 games, okay? But
yeah, that's not the same thing. You're right.
If he doesn't, Judy still finished top 20 in wide receivers last year, and he had a horrible year if you ask most people. Russell Wilson was the most pressured quarterback in the league. The Broncos receivers, Courtland Sutton, was the worst in separation rate. I mean, when you don't separate and you're getting highest pressure rate, least separation rate, I don't care if you're Johnny Unitas or Joe Montana. Like, I'm sorry. If those guys didn't have those numbers against them every year. Did it ever happen? Maybe it was close, but come on, let's just be honest. We know it didn't. It doesn't happen for guys that succeed on a consistent basis. Russell Wilson is too good, has been too good. Denver is too good of an organization, too good at what they do to stay bad. I just can't see them being that bad again. And when that comes to play, Courtland Sutton just isn't good enough. Marvin Mims has that role. I like Mims to be the wide receiver too, and so I like him over Rice as well, just because of the opportunity originally, that he sees in front of him.
Okay. I like it.
Feels like Mims kills Hamler and Washington more than it impacts Sutton Judy. Oh, I think it well, based on what I said, it definitely kills those other guys, because I didn't even mention them. So I really like Hamler too. I think if they didn't, here's the thing with that, 2 fat guys as well, man. I really was ready to go on a limb and say I want KJ Hamler over Courtland Sutton. I don't have to say that now because they drafted Marvin Mims, but I will say that I was ready to say Hamler takes that next role if he's healthy, because he hasn't been healthy. Sutton has been, and it seems like they're ready to move on from Sutton, in a big way. And here we go. Intrigue with Rice. Yeah, anybody who gets Mahomes, has some your ears and eyes are peeking up, right?
Yeah. It's just that we're waiting to see which one of those young wide receivers emerge, if any of them do, so it's like a crapshoot about, on which one does. So
how about this right here? How about a quick sidebar for you guys in the Chiefs with what we're talking about? Okay. So they had McKinnon last year, who was a treat in your Halloween bag, right? I mean, an unexpected king size snack that you got.
Oh, and that's what it.
Once he went there, sure. Once he went to Kansas City, maybe. But with that said, how about this? McKinnon, somebody's probably going to pay him, and the Chiefs, we know, aren't going to pay that money, which is why he probably leaves, right?
I think he just re-signed, actually.
Did
Yeah,
he?
I think like today.
Then
Yep.
take this segment out, because what I was going to say, though, was if they don't, how about McKinnon for McKissick? Mahomes would make McKissick a stud for a year.
Yeah,
He was a
would.
stud without him.
Mahomes
he
could
would.
make anybody a stud, though, for a year.
I really wanted to see them get rid of McKinnon, add McKissick, and have another year like that. Just even though I'm a Charger guy, and you know I don't like what the Chiefs do, I do appreciate it. And I just thought it would be kind of cool to see the McKinnon to McKissick, from veteran to veteran, trade the guy that had a good year for the older guy, and do the same thing again, just for Mahomes to kind of flex, I could do this with whoever you give to me.
Yeah, and McKinnon, I was all over him last year. I had him everywhere because just like you were saying, the upside with Mahomes, and then we had Pacheco, the rookie, so it was like, he's going to get the work, man. He's going to get them targets. And it didn't happen right away, but it did come, later in the season. So
who was it before him? Was even when they had Hilaire, it was Darrell Williams. I mean, it was, Williams had a great couple years there before COVID. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we know that anybody who goes to the Chiefs, that covers that. If you're going to the Chiefs and you can catch the football, you're going to be used, and you got a chance to turn your role into, even Juju. I think him going there was a huge role. He learned how to play opposite of Travis Kelce and how to fit in that offense. You guys think Juju has a better year elsewhere, or this is his best year ever? Not ever. Does Juju have a better year than the year he just had the rest of his career?
He's got a heck of an opportunity, to lead the Patriots in targets and catches and all that. But is he going to? I don't know. I'm not necessarily trusting it, and I don't think that the herd is either. They're he's going pretty late in drafts, so I don't. Yeah, I'm not taking him early. I'm not trusting it. So.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Mahomes elevated that. Like we were saying, Mahomes can elevate freaking anybody, throw them out there on the field, and Mahomes can make them look like a superstar if he wants to.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think he does.
I agree. I think it's important. Sorry, Gub. I think it's important. Just guys, people look at stats. When they're drafting, do not look at what players just did the year before, whether it's IDP, whether it's receivers, because we're believing Mahomes had a big role in this. There's defensive players, and I know, Cubby, you and I have talked about this. They had 100-something tackles because they played on a shitty defense, and they were the only guy. Now their role is changing. So where are they this year as opposed to what they did last year? Do you not take stock at all in what they did? Of course not. You do a little bit, but you got to take it all into consideration. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think a lot of people will reach higher in an average redraft fantasy league for Juju. So anybody watching this that's playing your traditional average fantasy, don't do it.
No, wait and get him where he's going. There's no reason to reach for him.
Even reach and just, wait, get a guy that's ready for that year 2 breakout. Get that next guy. Get that rookie, Addison, that's going to slide into a role. Don't get a guy that had a good role last year whose role has changed and the odds are good that his production decreases or even at best equals what he did. Give me the guy that's going to do more.
At absolute best. I mean, you've seen what happened towards the end of his time in Pittsburgh.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. You don't reach on that.
Exactly.
Because he's going from Mahomes to we're not even going to talk about. Yeah.
And Juju even said, he talked about, I watched what Kelce does, and I basically started doing what he did on the other side of the field. No discredit to Juju, genius, but basically just said, I'm going to do what Kelce does on the other side because Mahomes seems to find him every time. So what better thing to do than mirror a Hall of Fame player in Travis Kelce, but now you don't have that player or that offense. So temper expectations. But JC here, wish McKinnon would have come back to Minnesota. Yeah, any pass catching back with that, I think, I think there's a lot of teams that would want McKinnon.
Yeah. And
Not the
you know
Niners.
what? I'm probably going to do the same thing again this year. If McKinnon is available for the last pick of my drafts, I'm hitting the button every single time because he's back in KC. He's back with Pat Mahomes. He's going to have that receiving role there. Sure, Pacheco might steal some of that and earn some more of his keep this year, but I don't think it's going to be too much different for McKinnon, and you can't lose if you take him last pick in the draft. I did that so much last year. I'm recommending to everyone to do the same thing.
He didn't even go.
McKinnon.
He wasn't even go in redraft leagues. He wasn't even drafted because he wasn't even there. He wasn't even a part of it. So now you're probably looking at in a redrafts. Now McKinnon's probably going. He signed today. Redraft leagues, you now are going to have to reach up to get him, or him just fall in your lap because he's going to go towards the top half based on the production in that offense. So he's no longer a secret in redraft for sure. And if you don't already have him in Dynasty, it's probably going to take way too much to get him.
So I just want to say before we move on, I just got a notification a bit ago about Jahmyr Gibbs. I guess they're planning to use him quite a bit as a receiver, much more so than he was used in Alabama. Sorry, but I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
That's what I was saying a little while ago when we talked about Laporta. I brought that up. I said the word is that they want to use him too. So you've got now, the receiving core with Gibbs also in the slot and Montgomery at the running back. I love that, and I'm a David Montgomery truther, so, my opinion's a little biased. I think Chicago has not used him the right way. I think every time he's gotten volume, he's been a freaking fantasy stud and an NFL stud, and I think they've used him very poorly, and I hope that Detroit does a better job. Yeah. That's my take on it, too, is I think Montgomery is a stud. But I think Gibbs' catching ability, if he's going to be in the slot as well, obviously gives him, that upside.
Absolutely. Same.
What do you guys think? We can get into one of your guys' next take, or we can talk a little bit. JC's got his Addison better than JSN year one. I don't know if it's a super hot take.
I don't think so at all.
We're right there with you, JC. We love it. I think the volume is there for him in year one. Career-wise, maybe would be the better question. Yeah, because Minnesota will move on from Jefferson and Kirk, and then who knows what the offense looks like and what Seattle does after Geno. But yeah, when you've got DK, who's got the most red zone targets in the league, you still have Tyler Lockett, you still have Kenneth Walker, and Addison's got a chance to slide into a slot role that Adam Thielen occupied, who was still more than capable and probably could have still filled that role very well this year. I think if I'm Addison, there's not much of a better fit for me to be drafted in to produce.
For sure.
So the second part, is he the offensive rookie of the year? That's probably the hot take part.
Yeah.
Woo, JC, that's the fire, baby.
That's the hot take part for me. Yeah.
I got to read the end of it. Yeah.
I don't know this offensive rookie of the year business.
If it's not Bijan, who's your offensive rookie of the year on May 4th?
Anthony Richardson.
Okay.
Stroud.
Shit, is it my turn? Oh, man.
I'm nervous about that.
You know what? Give me Jahmyr Gibbs.
What? Okay.
Give me the Lions to just use him in a big way and run him and just go pass catching, very off the wall. But why not?
Why not? Why not?
Probably went Richardson, and I think he's probably the take with what he could do. But yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, second running back, he catches the ball. Detroit's high-powered. He's got his work cut out, but I like it. But hey, Addison, rookie of the year. Here we go. Two fat guys, Bryce Young. It's going to be a tough one, man. It's just you just don't know what we talked about where they're going to land. Now we don't know what they're going to do, so we don't have any answers. But it's like I don't even know how to describe it. You just because if Richardson plays well but is just not learning, how long do they stick with him? Does he do enough to be an offensive rookie of the year if they're 4-12? 4-13 now with the 17th game. But because I think if any of the Texans, Panthers, or Colts do halfway decent, one of those quarterbacks is going to have a leg up on everybody in the voting. Because quarterbacks, just like goalies, like in hockey, right? They get the credit, they get the blame, and hey, rightfully so. The ball's in their hand the most. So, I mean, if you were looking at Young, Stroud, and Richardson's probably the best bet because of the exciting opportunities of what he can do, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the ceiling goes, no one can touch it. We've already talked about that. That's why I'm targeting him, and that's why I say rookie of the year for him. I mean, if he hits the ground running, he's head and shoulders above everyone else because of what he can do. He's just electric. It's not nobody else in the draft like that. But, I lean it going to a quarterback period. Young is another good pick because, the quarterbacks get a lot of love with these awards. So if a quarterback does halfway decent, has a halfway decent season, it's probably going to him unless one of these skill players absolutely blows the doors off the league, shows that they're going to be great, then they'll probably steal it. But most of the time, these awards, they're looking for the quarterback first. So,
so which receiver wins it? If it's a receiver, who wins it?
I mean, it's the two guys we've been talking about. It's either JSN or Addison.
Yeah.
Or Downs. I like Downs.
I like this comment, though. I like this. The receivers last year, that's the thing. It's like, the QBs are better this year than they were last year. And the wide receivers were better last year than this year. It's going to be a lot for a wide receiver from this class to come out and win it.
Yeah, it's not even close to wide receiver talent this year. That's a great point.
Unless they surprise us.
But yeah, I love Addison.
There you go. Too fat. I like it. Gibbs, baby.
Hey.
I asked him this first. I asked this non-QB, non-Robinson. So that was because he said his answer, Too Fat answered Bryce Young. And then I asked him if it wasn't a QB or Robinson. And then he went Gibbs. But I think if you take the receiver, if you take quarterbacks and Bijan out, Gibbs definitely has as good of a shot because of that, talk of the receivers not being as good, but probably can give Addison as much shot to be involved too as possibly a number 2 in that offense. But with Jefferson and Hawkinson and still Cook, I don't know if Addison can get the volume to be number 1 offensive rookie of the year. Doesn't mean he doesn't have a great year, but let's go 2 more takeaways, one from each of you, and we'll wrap things up if you guys are good with that. Unless we're a little long on time, we can do 1 if you want, 1 or 2 more, whatever you guys want.
Let's go 1 of each of us.
Okay, Charles, you're up. Give me your next takeaway, and then we'll go Cubby, and we'll wrap things up. And again, man, hey, thank you guys, everybody watching. It's the Sports Affiliation at Sports Debate 23 at Cubby Strickland, at SoCal Ball Nerd, at the Sports of Philly. Check out the YouTube, check out the Twitter, all the content. Cubby just dropped a new article. Everybody tuning in. Just a quick thank you for now in the recording. What do you got for me, Charles?
Man, I had 2 more good ones in my opinion, but I'm gonna go with my sleeper. And there's probably gonna be a lot of people gonna be like, "You are stupid." Deuce Vaughn to Dallas. Ooh. I absolutely love it. Barring that he can compete, they've got a pretty deep running back room. I know there's still the possibility of Elliott coming back, which could also obviously limit that potential. But for me, Vaughn is the biggest aspect to me is his passing game. We were talking about Gibbs being really involved in the passing game. I think Deuce Vaughn can do that despite his size, because to me, that's what everybody's bashing on. He's only like 5'5". He's a really small guy. But one-on-one out in the flat, dude's going to be dangerous. And at K-State, he had 1,200 for 3 years. He had 1,280 receiving yards, like 9 touchdowns. One-on-one, he's going to be dangerous. He's shifty. LT compared him to Darren Sproles. I like that. I think he can make a similar impact, if not more. I like it. He's my sleeper for this year to come out and do something crazy.
He's about 10 pounds heavier than Darren Sproles too, which, is nice to give him a little more body and not take away from that aspect. Do you feel like, though, him and Tony Pollard doing the same thing, you think that helps him more than hurts him? Do you feel like Dallas is still missing? You brought up Zeke coming back, but are they kind of now going a two-man approach of the same style, or what do you think that turns into? And does that concern you at all?
Not as much, because I think they go a little bit different direction this year. I think you're going to see a lot of quick run plays. Obviously, Pollard's your number one back, but I think they're going to use Vaughn a lot, especially if he maintains and holds up in that lineup. Like I said, it's a deep running back room. He's got 3 or 4 other backs he's got to compete with coming into the offseason. But if he's the number 2 back, I think they use him out on passing downs like crazy and let Pollard kind of be that bell cow kind of guy, which we know he can be. Pollard can do crazy things. And I think he can be the bell cow and let Vaughn come in and catch a few passes a game, and he's going to be dangerous.
What do you think about that, Cubby?
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I mean, Vaughn is a great receiver. He catches the ball away from his body. He's never going to be a powerful runner, because of his size. But like you said, when you get him out in space and he's one-on-one, he's shaking dudes all the time. I can see that being, a pretty good prediction. So,
I mean, Dallas has already shown us that what they can do with a player of that skill set, i.e. Tony Pollard this past year. If Dallas is going to make that move to Pollard more as the traditional and a little bit of what he does and make Deuce that second guy, oh yeah. I mean, the value where you could get him, because I think they took him with the intent to be number 2 ahead of Malik Davis and, and Ronald Jones. Like, I don't think those 2 guys are competing with what he does if Pollard's going to be the first down back. And if that's the case, yeah, watch out. I mean, not to mention it was probably the coolest phone call of the draft, to see his dad call him and ask him if he wants to come to work with him, the next week.
Yeah,
I thought that was – I love that part of sports. I'm sure you guys do too. Most of us enjoy that aspect. But, for his dad to be breaking down saying, hey, you want to come to work with me next week, I thought was pretty cool. But I think Deuce has a skill set that is, they've tapped into it. And so I agree. If this is the group and they don't bring somebody back, I think Deuce passes those 2 guys, Ronald Jones and Malik Davis. I would take Deuce ahead of those guys, even in a redraft. I mean, especially in a dynasty, but even in a redraft. And he's worth that stash because this Cowboys offense has already shown what they can do with a guy like that. So I love it.
Yeah, that's more where I was thinking with that. They've already shown they probably use Pollard's skill set better than they did an Elliott style back. We all seen it. We've seen how Elliott regressed, and we've seen how Pollard shot up. They can do that. So why not take another little shifty guy who you could take advantage of that one-on-one talent and let him go off?
The only way it matters is if they do bring like Zeke or a real hardcore first down runner, because then Pollard shifts into so much of that. And they're not going away from him. That Deuce might be, a year or 2 away. So that's where the dynasty value comes in and the redraft value slips away a little bit there, right, Cubby? So monitor kind of Dallas's news and what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% do that. And I think, Deuce is much better right away as a pro player than he is in fantasy anyway. But, he could definitely be a fantasy asset with his pass catching ability. And if the Cowboys put him out there enough, man, I mean, I like his skill set. So, yeah.
I love what you just said, Cubby. We talked so much about what keeps you off the field in fantasy is what? Not being NFL ready. And you just said he's more NFL ready. if I see some fantasy promise and a guy who's more NFL ready and those concerns go away, I'm going to target that guy for a late sleeper that people aren't watching, because if he's already showing he belongs on the field, the opportunity should come. All he's got to do is show what we already see is there, as opposed to a guy not getting on the field because he's not NFL ready or can't block or can't do those things. You don't ever get the shot.
Yeah, let me put it this way. If Deuce Vaughn is 5'11" and 190 pounds, he's going in the second round. You know what I mean? Like, it's, yeah.
I think they're, if they don't bring back that, like SoCal was saying, that true number one, that first down runner, the potential is crazy. They could throw out trick plays. Can you imagine a little 5'5" running back getting lost in your giant offensive lineman? I mean, he could get lost in it and just go. We've shown he has the burst. Dude's crazy. He did some crazy things at K-State, so I love it.
Sure did.
I mean, I witnessed firsthand the Darren Sproles journey. So, you know, he's the guy that really changed the game for that position, right? I mean, he really is the guy that changed the game and made the Chargers just a ridiculous thing. Obviously, they had LT for the first part of that, which helped. But it just adds to that dynamic. Dallas is a run-first team, a top offensive line. If I want the pass catching back, other than, you know, the Chiefs, I mean, this is a good offense to definitely have that in. So I love it. Deuce Vaughn. Watch for Deuce Vaughn big time. Cubby, let's go. One more takeaway from you. And
all right. I'm also going to go with one of my sleepers, Zach Evans. So the Rams running back room presents a great opportunity for this kid to get, you know, playing time early. Sean McVay was very vocal about being unhappy with that room last year. And even if he wasn't vocal about it, we've seen all the moves and all the craziness. The actions speak louder than words. I mean, he soured on Cam Akers, I think, the year before last. And then we heard about him and Darrell Henderson, how they were going to split carries in the offseason. And then they started to lean on Henderson more and benched Akers. And then they soured on Henderson, ended up cutting him outright. They were praising Kyron Williams like he was the answer. Found out he just really wasn't. And then Cam Akers comes back and finishes the year strong. I don't see any way that Cam Akers gets a second contract with this team. So Zach Evans has a great opportunity in front of him. He's an excellent all-around, you know, skill set for the pro game. He's got great vision. He's a home run hitter. I think McVay is going to like him the second he puts him in the game, and I think we're going to see a lot of Zach Evans. I do think that Zach Evans is going to be an asset this year in redraft. He's a great pick in Dynasty. You know, it's weird that we see a late round pick get an opportunity like the one that will probably be presented to him, but I think Zach should have gone earlier in the draft. He's a talented back, and he's a guy that people have been on for years. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. I think 5-star, 4 or 5, but he was up there. I mean, the NFL has had their eye on Zach Evans for a long time, and now he gets an opportunity at a place where he could see plenty of volume year one. I'm all over Zach Evans this year.
I love that. I mean, and the Rams, I mean, they moved up to take Kyron. They moved up to take Akers. I mean, they've moved up to take running backs that they like. And I know the room has gotten weird, but they obviously really like what he brings to the table. And so with what you're saying and with that, the opportunity is there for him to slide right in, because regardless of what Akers did at the end of the year, this Rams team has shown us nothing for us to believe that they're locked in. And to trade up, you know, to go, even though it's a 6th round, they still got the guy they wanted. You know, I like it. I like that, Cubby. I think that he can slide right into a role where he can be used from day one. And I do wonder what's going on with Kyron Williams for a team that loved him so much just a year ago. But again, a league that just kind of dismisses running backs and you're willing to draft another one, that should tell you that they want to try to see what Evans can bring while he's cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
The later
that's the thing.
When you draft somebody, the other guy gets older and he's a want, right? You want the guy cheap.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yep. And you could probably get him pretty late in redraft this year. I know he's not going super early in dynasty drafts, so I mean, why not? You know, I'm pulling the trigger when I can, for sure.
I mean, the potential's there, and kind of like y'all were saying, it's been very clear that they're not real high on Akers, and I think Evans can definitely step in and take that role. We could even see him, in my opinion, quite a lot, especially towards the middle end of this year once he starts kind of learning the system and getting comfortable. I think we could see a lot of him this year.
Yep.
And he's a guy that we saw in our latest draft, Cubby, go in the 3rd round of the rookie draft. He's a guy to me that might be worth maybe that, last round redraft pick. If he's still there and everybody else is gone, you're trying to fill out your team, maybe snag him there. If not, really watch for him because he's one of the guys I think on a short list of guys that can get their chance right away that we aren't already drafting in a redraft league. You know what I'm saying? There's only a short list of those guys. The studs are going to go, but the backups that we talk about are finding that McKinnon or that, rookie running back that comes on the scene, that Pacheco, who probably is already taken as he was in most last year. There weren't a lot of leagues he was available in, even redraft. If you're in a league where people have an idea of what's going on, those guys are probably gone. So this is a short list of a guy that might be there in the last pick or even on your waiver wires. I'd snag him and drop that second defense or whatever, second tight end you might have. I mean, if you're stacked, fine. But if you've got that second spot and this guy's available after a redraft, I'm putting him on the end of my bench.
Why not? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You got to be willing to make some of those moves and risk a little bit because the first week he has a good week. If you're not in the right position to snag him based on your waivers, you're out of luck.
Mm-hmm.
You got to figure out. To me, he's definitely a guy that probably won't be drafted in a redraft that you could stash early. You just got to look at your squad,
Yep.
We're talking Philly a little bit here in the chat. We can finish up with this. Siegel brought up Swift. Swift being a great again this season. Brought up Philadelphia. Too Fat agreed on Evans. Ooh, Dwayne McBride. I like it. Minnesota is where McBride went, right? I almost just took him in the 5th round of our rookie draft. I went someone else first, and if McBride's there when it comes back, I'm taking him. I do think with Dalvin Cook on his way out, Madison seems not to be the guy. Dwayne McBride is a great fit for a team that likes their running backs too. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yep. Another spot where the running back room could open up pretty quickly and he could find himself with a nice sized role pretty soon. I like that pick a lot. I might start drafting him more.
So Philly
Why
with
not?
Swift. What'd you say, Charles?
I said, why? I can't talk. I said, why not? I mean, you got to make the risk. So that's another one of those players. Take the risk and see what happens.
And if you're not getting Bijan at the top, right? Only one of us gets that pick. Where can you find somebody to give you that type of value possibly really late and actually have a role sizable to even compete? That's what you're looking for. Right. Zach Evans and McBride, those are two guys that fit that role. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, but I think there's a small group of people that fit that role where you get them 40 rounds later or rookie draft or waiver wire as opposed to a top pick. Obviously, the value you get from that is way different. You can win those battles and find those guys, couple that with the team you drafted, you put yourself in a good position. You got to know those names. These are two of them I think to watch out for sure.
Yep.
SoCal, I'd love to pose a question before we wrap up for you and Cubby. Overall, who do you guys think as a team won the draft?
I got to go with Philly, and there's not much hesitation on my I mean, they just added some of the best talent in the draft at outrageous spots that they shouldn't have slipped to, and this was a Super Bowl roster, so I can't go with anyone else but Philly. Even though I like plenty of other drafts, I gotta go with Philly.
Yeah, I would love to pick a different team, but I can't. I can't on an NFL level. When you add to the pass rush with those two guys, you trade up and get the cornerback as well to cover yourself if maybe some of those guys don't have the years that they had. Because Roseman brought in like Bradbury and those guys who overperformed, but he also just covered his butt by getting Ringo, in that spot. And he got the pass rushers who now get to be, these are rotational pass rushers. These aren't even guys that are coming in to be the guy. They're coming in to fill the rotation. So now when they come off the field, the big guns come back in. Are you serious? Yeah. I mean, the rotations on that team for an NFL game are insane. And then because of what that team already was, it's hard for me. But I will say two fat guys brought up Houston. And I think we touched on this. Getting Stroud and getting your quarterback and your pass rusher. If those guys are good and are part of that team for the next 10 years, we will look back and say the Texans won this draft, I think. But I think right now you got to go Philly won because they're ready to win right now and just bolstered that unit. And that was the unit you could say kind of prevented them from winning the Super Bowl. They had 0 sacks, even though they led the league. So they said, you know what? It wasn't enough. Let's go get 2 more guys and a corner to shore up our defense because we know we can score points in the Super Bowl. We want to make sure you can't score.
90% of them from the same team. I'm going to say it just because I wanted to. I knew that was going to be y'all's answer. We don't want to hear about the Georgia Eagles no more.
Yeah.
How about Georgia, bro? The whole, what they say, the entire 2021 defense on Georgia has been drafted.
Wow.
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, they were insane.
Was it the 2021 Bama team, I think? It had Devontae Smith, Judy, even another receiver. It had Najee. It had like 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and all 8 of their offensive linemen from the 2021 or 2018 Alabama team are all in the league. They were all on the same Bama team. I mean, Judy, Devontae, and another guy, Najee, and 2 other running backs, and 8 linemen, all in the NFL. I mean, just insane. And then they were going over Georgia's schedule today for next year. It's a joke. Nobody's beating Georgia. I'm telling you right now, Georgia to go undefeated, place the bet now because the odds will never be better. They play Tennessee towards the end of the year. There's no chance they lose the game before that. If you're a betting fan, go look now. Georgia to go undefeated. It's probably not even good now, but take it now if you like it. It's insane. Tennessee's their hardest game, and I don't think Tennessee, they just lost Hooker, Hyatt, Tillman.
Yeah, no.
It's insane. They don't leave Georgia until October.
Dear God.
And they go like Auburn, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. It's insane the schedule this team has with the roster they have. But
it's a great year to be a Georgia fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the odds are now if they're even decent to go Georgia to undefeated and win it all. But but other than that, you guys got anything else you want to mention? Any honorable mentions? I know we talked about the Panthers a little bit. There's a Ringo there that I think is worth watching maybe.
My honorable mentions was the other one I was going to bring up. It's one of the ones we talked about before, and I'm excited about. It's freaking Darnell Washington at Pittsburgh, dude. I'm so excited about that. Pickett having a 6'7", 270-pound tight end running around. I couldn't be more happy about that. The mechanics can be fixed. Mm-hmm. And just something I was going to put down about him, for the people worried about his pass catching ability, that the mechanics of that can be fixed. But out of his 30 catches last season, 22 of them were for first downs.
Oh.
And you got Freiermuth on the other side. I mean,
the potential is there.
What Pittsburgh is doing. They did great too. I mean, as well. I mean, getting, trading up, then they still got Porter out of it. I mean, they were able to trade down and get Joey Porter Jr.
That was
build that defense. I mean, now you have a blocker too. It's like, I remember watching what Gronkowski did in that playoff game against the Chargers using Gronk as a blocker. Can you imagine having Darnell in there as a blocker for Najee and you still have Freiermuth as that kind of getaway tight end with Pickens and Johnson?
Ish.
Yeah, I mean, here you go. Almost feel like Washington helps Najee more than Pickett. And I've been big on I already told you guys I love Najee this year. And now with Washington, if he's out there blocking at that size, I love it. Two fat guys. I mean, more reason, to go Najee. So good stuff, guys. Greatly appreciate it. You guys got any final words? And we'll wrap it up here.
No, just you know what? Chase Brown is in a similar situation as Zach Evans. Joe Mixon's got some legal troubles. He could find himself, with a role by the end of the year. There's some guys that could surprise us. You know what I mean? I'm looking. There was some weird landing spots, but there were some very good ones too. Overall, this draft class, it wasn't the best, but we certainly got some players and we got some new weapons in fantasy. I'm excited about it, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. I just want to also shout out again all you people that jump on and talk with us and stuff like that. We really, really appreciate you guys. Keeps the conversation going, gives us more interesting things to talk about. We love it, and we appreciate everybody's support.
Boom. I love this. Yeah, we do. I mean, echo that, guys. We appreciate it. We love everybody tuning in. And please, man, drop some more comments, share it, get the chatter going. I mean, like they said, they drop, Kendre Miller, Kane is a sleeper. There's so many names. I mean, I love Jonathan Ringo going to the Panthers. I think him and Young can develop a nice chemistry. He's got the size. We talked about Mims in Denver. There's so much there. I mean, next week we'll see where we go. We may have to delve into some sleepers a little bit that we didn't talk about. We'll revisit, but appreciate you guys, man. Siegel, Too Fat, love all the comments. JC, everybody else that has jumped in or catches the recording. We value you. We appreciate you. We love it. TSA appreciates it. And we'll be back with some more. And like I said, man, hit us some messages. Shoot us a message at TSA. We love new topics, questions, draft questions, auction, keeper, start, sit, dynasty, whatever it might be. Throw them our way. We got it all. Again, I'm SoCal Ball Nerd. Charles, Cubby, at Sports Debate 23 with Charles, at Cubby Strickland, at SoCal Ball Nerd, at the Sports Affiliate. Check us out on Twitter. Check out the website, thesportsaffiliation.com. Check out the YouTube. Check each of us out as well and all of our lovely team members and group that we have. We love you. And for episode 3, that's all we got. See you guys.
See you guys.